Long before forests spread across continents, before animals roamed the land, and before the air itself became breathable, Earth was a hostile, lifeless place. The surface was dominated by bare rock, harsh sunlight, and an atmosphere lacking the oxygen that complex life depends on. And yet, something extraordinary began to change this world. The first green life did not simply appear, it transformed the planet in ways that made all future life possible. The story begins in the ancient oceans, more than 2 billion years ago, when microscopic organisms known as cyanobacteria began to harness sunlight through photosynthesis. These tiny life forms, often called blue-green algae, were among the first to use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to produce energy, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. At first, this oxygen did not accumulate in the atmosphere. Instead, it reacted with dissolved iron in the oceans, forming vast deposits of iron oxide that settled on the seafloor. These deposits, still visible today as banded iron formations, are silent evidence of a process that would eventually reshape the entire planet. Over millions of years, as more oxygen was produced, the oceans could no longer absorb it all. Oxygen began to accumulate in the atmosphere, triggering what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event. This was one of the most dramatic transformations in Earth's history. The atmosphere, once dominated by gases like methane and carbon dioxide, slowly shifted toward an oxygen-rich composition. For many early organisms, this change was catastrophic, as oxygen was toxic to them. But for others, it opened the door to entirely new forms of metabolism and energy use, setting the stage for more complex life. Despite this monumental shift, life remained confined to the oceans for a very long time. The land above remained barren and unforgiving. Without plant life, there was nothing to stabilize soil, retain moisture, or create the conditions necessary for ecosystems to form. The transition from water to land was not a simple step. It required a series of evolutionary innovations that would take hundreds of millions of years to develop. Around 470 million years ago, during the Ordovician period, the first simple plants began to colonize land. These early pioneers were small, low-growing organisms that resembled modern mosses and liverworts. They lacked true roots, stems, and leaves, but they possessed the ability to survive outside of water. Scientists believe these plants formed symbiotic relationships with fungi, allowing them to absorb nutrients from the rocky surface. This partnership, known as mycorrhizal association, was crucial for survival in nutrient-poor environments. These early land plants began to alter the surface of the earth in subtle but powerful ways. By breaking down rock into soil, they created the foundation for more complex ecosystems. Their presence helped retain moisture, reducing the harshness of the environment. Over time, as more plants spread across the land, they began to influence the climate itself. Through photosynthesis, they continued to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, contributing to long-term cooling trends. The next major leap came with the evolution of vascular plants. Unlike their earlier counterparts, these plants developed specialized tissues to transport water and nutrients throughout their structures. This innovation allowed them to grow taller and spread further from water sources. Among the earliest known examples is Cooksonia, a small but significant plant that lived around 430 million years ago. With its simple branching stems and spore-producing tips, Cooksonia represents a turning point in the history of plant life. As vascular plants diversified, the landscapes of Earth began to change more dramatically. Taller plants created new layers of habitat, while their roots stabilized soil and prevented erosion. The development of leaves increased the efficiency of photosynthesis, allowing plants to capture more sunlight and produce more energy. These changes set the stage for the emergence of the first forests during the Devonian period. The rise of early forests marked a profound shift in Earth's ecosystems. Plants like Archaeopteris grew into tree-like forms with woody trunks and extensive branching systems. These early trees not only transformed the physical landscape, but also had a significant impact on the atmosphere. By absorbing large amounts of carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen, they contributed to further climate changes, including a potential cooling of global temperatures. As plant life became more complex, it also began to influence other forms of life. The presence of vegetation on land created new opportunities for organisms to evolve and adapt. Arthropods, such as early insects and arachnids, began to explore terrestrial environments, followed eventually by vertebrates. The spread of plants was not just a background event, it was the foundation upon which terrestrial ecosystems were built. The Carboniferous period saw the expansion of vast swamp forests dominated by unusual plants like Lepidodendron and Sigillaria. These environments were rich in oxygen and supported a wide range of life forms. When these plants died, they were often buried in waterlogged conditions that prevented complete decomposition. Over time, this organic material was transformed into coal, locking away carbon that would otherwise remain in the atmosphere. But Earth's history is not a story of constant growth. It is also a story of change and loss. Shifts in climate, the movement of continents, and mass extinction events repeatedly reshape the planet's ecosystems. Many of the plants that once dominated the Earth disappeared, replaced by new forms better adapted to changing conditions. The emergence of seed plants marked another major evolutionary milestone. Seeds allowed plants to reproduce without relying on water, giving them a significant advantage in drier environments. This innovation mutation led to the spread of gymnosperms, such as early conifers, which came to dominate many landscapes during the Mesozoic era. Eventually, flowering plants, or angiosperms, appeared and rapidly diversified. Their ability to form complex relationships with pollinators and produce fruits for seed dispersal allowed them to outcompete many older plant groups. Today, they represent the vast majority of plant species on Earth. Looking back across this immense span of time, it becomes clear that the transformation of Earth into a habitable planet was not the result of a single event, but a long and continuous process driven by the evolution of plant life. From microscopic organisms in ancient oceans to towering forests that reshaped the atmosphere, each stage played a critical role in creating the conditions necessary for complex life to exist. The air that fills the lungs, the soil that supports agriculture, and the ecosystems that sustain life all trace their origins to these early green pioneers. Their legacy is not only preserved in fossils and geological formations, but also in every living plant that exists today. What began as a simple process of capturing sunlight became the force that changed an entire planet. And in that transformation lies one of the most important stories in the history of life on Earth. A story of how the first green life made the world not just livable, but alive.